Well, we're back together for our second show, the collaboration between Behind the Lavalava and the Faika podcast. It's four Pollies getting together talking about MMA. Right now, we're gonna look back at some of the picks, and I think we'll go ahead and start keeping track of our picks because um, everybody on here swears that they're the worst at picking fights, even though I know I'm the worst. So we're gonna keep track of that to make sure that I can retain the title of the worst fight picker. We'll look back. We'll necessarily, you know, count from our backwards, looking at the last card that we had. But I think going forward, when we're going to preview the card for tomorrow. But I think we'll maybe take four picks each and start keeping score to see how much worse I am than everybody else. So I'm Carl with the FICA podcast of PBD, and we'll go down the line on my screen. The next person is Spencer. You want to introduce yourself?
Everybody, Spencer. You can find me on Instagram, Ulupopo Art, or Facebook, wherever. That's kind of my handle for my art stuff. But yeah, just happy to kick it here again, representing for Behind the Lavalava.
Awesome. Milford?
I'm just Milford Teofalo, representing for Behind the Lavalava, and glad to be with the partner, Carl, again, Joe and Spence. Hey, this is fun.
Awesome. And Joe the Schmo.
Yes, that's a nod to Spencer and I's former podcasting days for Face to Foot style podcast when we used to chop it up, just me and him about MMA. Nobody listened, but it's all good. It was just for me and him anyway. But yeah,
Face to Foot. I like it.
Yep, and I was the schmo, so that was my shtick. And then some other guy who's in the media now, he calls himself the schmo, and he gets all the interviews now. I'm like, man, I did that first. I have evidence that I was Joe the schmo before that guy, but whatever.
Well, we're going to reclaim that. You got a tradition going. You're 2 shows deep in your MMA career. So there we have a shout out to the old school, the OG'er, Mark Hunt, putting his hands on Derek Lewis. And I hadn't seen this picture before. So when I came across it for the show today, I was like, man, that's how bad it is. How is there an MMA picture out there of a Samoan fighter that I haven't seen? And I hadn't seen this one. And actually, I don't remember there being that many exciting points, big exciting points, because that looks like that should have given us more action than I remember in the fight. But big shout out to Mark Hunt. Hopefully, I think he's still in a lawsuit with the UFC for all of the PED enhanced fighters that he ended up fighting. So a shout back to our USO Mark Hunt. So I kind of wanted to get everybody's thought on this is what's in the next 2 weeks. And when you look at what's up for the next 2 weeks, there's a lot of action. You've got Bellator Hawaii. They're doing 2 shows, and that's a Bellator thing. It makes sense, right? They're going to go to Hawaii. They're going to do 2 shows, not 1 show. So probably a name on there, Lima Lay McFarland, the former, I want to say bantamweight or flyweight champion. Going to be a lot of PI fighters on that card. And we got Max fighting in 2 weeks, actually 1 week. And then we have that card out on One Fighting Championship, Nong O. And on the bottom of that card, somewhere in the middle of the main card, the Tongan middleweight, EC Fitikafu, 7-1, is looking to bounce back from his. He had a decision loss last fight out, but it's a good time to be a fight fan. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the Gervonta Tank Davis versus King Ryan Garcia. But any thoughts just off the top of your head? Are any of these you're planning on absolutely not missing? And I'm assuming probably the one over on the left, UFC 287, is probably must see TV for the 4 of us. But any thoughts on any of these that you're looking forward to?
I'm definitely looking forward to Holloway versus Allen because Max is one of my favorite fighters, and it's just one of those things where it's been hard to come to terms with the idea that the Blessed era might be coming to an end because it still feels like it's just so fresh. Like he just got here and it feels like just yesterday he was dominating. And, he had that first close loss to Volkanovski, arguably won the second, but that third fight was so definitively for Volk that there's no doubt who the top dog in that division is right now. And so for me, I've just been jonesing to see like where is Max now? Where does he solemnly fit? Because I remember even hearing some people taking a second look at his fight with Yair Rodriguez before the third Volkanovski fight and saying, you know what, he wasn't looking as good then, and he's on a decline. I kind of wanted to just attribute that to Yair getting better, which he absolutely has. Obviously, he's fighting for the title next, but like I'd rather it be that the case than thinking that Max is on the decline, because in my mind, he's still so young. He's still got so much to offer. But at the same time, this is a tough game, and you can only let that button get pressed so many times. So I'm very eager to see how he holds his own with Arnold Allen, to see is he still top in that division just under Volkanovski.
Makes sense. Milford?
I don't think Max is on the decline. I think there are factors affecting his performance and preparation. Like, he just got married, not too long ago, and he's streaming. He's always been streaming, but streaming out the wazoo when it comes to gaming. One thing I want to see out of him, though, is his corner. He's got a great wrestling coach, the homie. And little known fact, or big known fact, is they got great wrestling programs in high school. I think a big part of that is because they have judo in high school, and when you mesh the two, that's a great combination. Look no further than Honolulu High School girls wrestling program. A couple Olympians out of my high school. But anyways, I want to hear his corner talk more about the striking, especially that last Volkanovski fight. Him planting he's got that wide stance, him planting heavy on that lead leg, and Volk timing it every time on the way in. Plant that leg, piecing him up. In the last couple fights, I never really hear his corner talk about the striking strategy and what to do. So I hope to hear more out of that. Like, I can't say he's on the decline, but I can say my opinion is just the preparation, the hunger is not the same.
It's funny you bring up the judo piece. I remember in a million years ago when I was in jiu-jitsu class, everybody would always, the new wrestler would come in. The wrestler is always physicality, the strength and everything. But be honest with you, I didn't like the judokas that would show up. Like, I didn't like tangling with the judo guys. When we'd have somebody new in class and they'd say, oh yeah, he's a wrestler from wherever. And I'd be like, yeah, I kind of know what to expect. But man, the judo guys, the grips were so off the chart. The handles, they'd get a hold of you and it was like, you were not breaking the grip. And then the throws were just ridiculous as well. So those were the two that we looked at in class, like, oh man, you got to deal with that guy. But to me, the judo guys were the worst. They were the worst coming in because and to combine that with wrestling, yeah, that's a really good point. Two good bases that match up, that would combine well. Joe, how about you? You see any of those where you're like, ooh, I got to see that?
Yeah, I think the one I'm most hyped about is the same as the Holloway Arnold Allen fight. I think it's a great opponent too. Arnold Allen has a good step up in competition, but that guy's got a 9-10 fight win streak now in the UFC. Like, he needs a challenge. And so it's like, this one makes a lot of sense for him. And it's a great challenge for Max, because I don't think it's a slap in the face for Max to fight somebody that's, I think Arnold Allen's well known enough. It's just, he's not Max Holloway yet, but he's a tough opponent. So yeah, it's a good measure and nod to both of these guys' skill. It's going to be a good fight, I think, like all the way around. And plus Arnold Allen's think of like a bummer of a last fight where I think Cater blew out his knee, and I don't know if it was because of the kick or whatever, but it just kind of was lackluster. So I'm sure he just wants to get back on the on a good note. So I'm excited for that one. I think there's a lot on the line for both of them, so they're going to be throwing it down. But of course, the fight this weekend is going to be a big one that I'm looking forward to. All the fights on that card are great.
So we're going to preview that card specifically at the end of the show and look at the main card at least, and also if there's any fights you want to talk about on the undercard. Bringing up Yair Rodriguez, I'm finally, I don't know how long ago it was, 2018, maybe 2017. I was salty about Yair Rodriguez whooping BJ Penn for years. I'm finally over that. I don't mind seeing him win now, but man, it didn't after just beating the crap out of BJ Penn. It didn't matter who he was fighting. I was rooting for the other guy for a long time, and then seeing him, really pick it up in the last, I don't know, year or two of his career and overcoming some adversity and that kind of thing. Now I can push off the BJ Penn memory off into the past of where I don't hold that against him. I had that with Chris Weidman as well. Chris Weidman, after he beat Anderson twice, I couldn't stand Chris Weidman. So saltiness dies hard. So we are going to definitely preview this card 100% at the end of the show. So stick around. You can figure out, we're going to start to build the crown of the worst fight picker of all. That will be towards the end. First, we're going to go back and we're going to talk about the last card that we previewed, was Edwards versus Kamaru Usman. And what a performance by Leon Edwards. And it's one of those things from my perspective, I always see that. I remember the saying, I think it was a boxing saying, that when a younger guy comes up and beats the longtime champion, and they rematch the younger guy, and maybe not even by age, but in experience, the up and coming guy usually wins the rematch too. And it was one of those things that I was looking at that, saw it happen with Weidman, saw it happen with, Frankie Edwards and BJ Penn. So the guy who upsets the champion in the rematch usually wins, not always. But this was, to me, we'll go through everybody's thoughts with it, but to me, it was almost more definitive because of the way that the fight went. And it wasn't, you listen to the commentary in the first fight and the end of the fight, Rogan's like, hey, he's just going to be happy to, have made it to the end and made it in, and gone to a decision. And then he pulls it out with a kick. And this one really, like, to me, Usman looked old. He looked a step slower. And it just looked like, kind of a punctuation mark at the end of, adding on to what happened in the last fight. But we'll go backwards, start with Joe. What'd you see coming out of this fight? And then where do you think each of them go?
That's a good question. I think this is an exciting time for the welterweight division. A lot of top contenders, a lot of stars that they've built up in this division. I think welterweight's always been one of the best divisions anyway, as far as like a combination of speed, power. Like, these guys are all great, but where things are right now, I think it's in a good spot. I think by Usman losing, gives him a chance to fight some of these other guys that really want to vie for the title. I mean, there's so many matchups right now that could be had. I wasn't a fan of the immediate rematch. I think, Carl, you had mentioned that you're not a big fan of the kind of immediate rematch thing either. I think this kind of goes to show why it's not always great. And then again, I'm just speaking out of my butt, but I'm just saying, like, I think he needed some time off. He just lost where he had beaten this guy before. He knew he beaten pretty, I guess it was a slow decision the first time they met, but I mean, when he got knocked out, it's like sometimes you think you need to take a mental break away from that, maybe get another win so your mind's right. I think we talked about mentality last time, and so I don't know. He was just a step behind. I think there was some hesitation. Michael Bisping was talking about that a little bit in his podcast too, so I kind of agree with him on that. So yeah, but I think there's exciting stuff. I think Usman's not down and out. He's gonna go fight some of these other dogs in the division, maybe even rematch Burns, depending on where things go, and probably be right back here at some point. I don't know if they can justify a fourth fight, but Leon, same thing, man. He's got so many contenders he can fight next. If it's obviously not going to be Usman, there's so many other people to step in. So I don't know. This is great opportunities for both guys, I think, to kind of establish themselves where they're at, and Usman to kind of get back to his crown as he's like fighting for it again.
Yeah, I think the tough part about doing the third, you know what I mean, the immediate rematch, and it's their third fight, really puts Usman in a bad spot, right? Because if he loses, like, it's really tough now to make a fourth fight down the road. Whereas if Usman doesn't get the immediate shot, goes back, builds himself back up, you know, there's a runway for that fight. But those immediate rematches, they really, you know, Holloway ended up in the same kind of boat, and he got another shot, and it was, you know, it was odd. But yeah, I'm usually not a fan of the immediate rematch. Milford, how about you?
Man, so yeah, we talked about recovery and being knocked out, and that how that affects all across the combat sports world. Like bouncing back from a knockout, you know, they recommend you take some time off. He got hit by a freaking, you know, a log, a log to the side of the head. And as much as I believe that Kamaru's, you know, he's a killer and he does have that mentality, and you know, I believe when he said that he was going to really get in there and go after him, you can see his body not agreeing with his mind. I don't think he necessarily looks slow or old, but that his, you know, instinctively his body was just like, oh, watch out, watch out. Because usually, you know, Kamaru, he goes through hits, he eats, he takes them, and he goes in aggressive all the way through, but not this time. There's hesitation that I believe I saw, and I'm happy for Leon though. It's about time, you know, and for him to do it in his hometown, and after all that long time off and obstacles he had to overcome and waiting in line. Very happy for him. But for Usman, I don't know. Like, I don't know if his hunger's still there for real. Like, we know how great he is, but you know, to be at the top and then fall and then lose that rematch, like, he has nothing to prove really. But you know, where do you go from here? I don't know if he wants it or not still.
Yeah, it's tough when you've been at the top, you've seen it, you've made some money. You know, can you get that fire back to jump down that, you know, and he knows what the road is, right? He made that road all the way there. Not that he didn't earn his title shot, you know what I mean? It's a rematch, but he knows the road that led up to the first title shot, like that long road that he's now, you know, he knows where he's at. So it's a really good point. Like, what does Kamaru want to do? Spence, how about you?
Well, first off, let me just go ahead and put my this feather in my caps, as long as we're throwing in for who's the worst MMA picker, because I picked Usman to win, and so I just want that to be on record. But yeah, it was a great fight, and actually it was very telling. I'm not sure if I saw so much of a decline from Usman as much as being reminded of how good Edwards is. Actually, I was thinking about his first round with Bilal Muhammad. So pandemic is coming to a close. Edwards finally, he'd been out of action for almost 2 years, and he came back, and yeah, that fight ended horribly because he gouged his eye, and it was a no contest. But that first round, it was very, we see how dominant of a grappler Bilal is, but Rocky comes in being almost an entirely pure striker and can keep him at bay and not be taken down, and to actually light him up. And I saw more of that with Usman in a case where, you know, like I did say that I thought the biggest X factor would be the elevation of the first fight being in Salt Lake, and that's not going to be a factor in this one. You can see what Rocky can do when he's not struggling to breathe after round one. And I still thought Usman would be able to pull it off because I think Usman's that good, but you know, hats off to Rocky. And, you know, it is one of those things where this is why it's so impressive when you get these guys who get these long runs for title defenses. You know, like you hear that expression, heavy is the head that wears the crown. I remember when Anderson lost to Weidman, you go look at that interview, and Anderson almost looked relieved. Like, I don't know if you remember when he's being interviewed, like, hey, it's over. What's up now? And Anderson was basically, he's just like clapping, like he's ready to just move on. Like he was happy. It was almost like he was relieved that he wasn't at the top of the heat anymore.
You bring up a good point. Matt Hughes did the same thing when BJ Penn beat him. Hughes actually said it's a relief. It's, I could take a kind of exhale, gather myself, and make another run. But it's a really good point that these runs that people are on, like you could see GSP at the end of his streak, he was mentally, that was as much of a mental, I need to get out. And no knock on Johnny Hendricks, but, I think GSP probably saw, hey, I'm struggling with fighters that I would have beaten, a couple of years ago. So great point. 100%. So maybe Kobe Covington's lobbying for a fight in either Utah or Denver or Mexico City, because he's next in line for a shot at the 170-pound crown. Let's just go backwards and go through from Spencer. How do you see that fight going? Now seeing what Leon can do in terms of defending the takedown, both with Bilal and Usman, knowing what Kobe brings to the table. How do you see that thing playing out? And we'll make the predictions when we get into the, when we preview that card when it comes up. But just your initial thoughts at that matchup.
So my first thoughts is that I think Rocky gets it done again, because to me, Usman and Colby are just such similar fighters, very high output, very grappling heavy. The biggest difference, though, is that Usman had, although at first we didn't see a lot of like knockout power, he developed that as he kept training in Colorado with, I forget his team there, but he started finishing guys, because I used to think, well, man, he set the record for most strikes landed in a title fight against Woodley. Like hit him like 300 times to the body, but Woodley didn't even look hurt. But then after that, he starts murking guys. And so Colby is basically that high output, but he still doesn't have that one punch knocking power, which Usman was able to find. So I see this basically panning out similarly, but to Colby's credit, that guy has no quit in him. He does keep coming, and we saw him giving Usman a lot of trouble in the later rounds in their second fight. So, I mean, look, it's not set in stone, but my first impression is I think Usman has a better chance of beating Rocky than Colby does.
So Rocky's in danger of getting Spencer and myself to both pick him in a fight. That's bad news for
beware, Rocky. Beware.
How about you, Milford?
If Leon keeps him at distance, keep him from pressuring him like he did Robbie Lawler and just everybody else, I think Leon has it in the bag. But Colby, his pressure is a bit different than Usman. Usman may be a bit more technical, but as far as output goes and just setup, I think Colby's gonna have him. I think Colby's gonna find more ways. I don't think he's going to be as hesitant as Usman was in this last one, because Usman in this camp knows that Leon was going to go separate hands every time he shoots in for a takedown or whatever. And Usman is good enough at wrestling, to know when to transition, this and that. But he didn't do any of that really. And I think Colby's going to be more ready for that, be ready to play chess when it comes to the grappling game. But like I said, if Leon's able to keep that distance, he has it. But otherwise, for now, just the point game, I think Colby has him.
It looks like Leon might have a chance. And we got one, at least one of us is picking where the curse wouldn't work against him. How about you, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, just like you said, no official predictions yet until we get closer. And my initial thoughts was Leon, but Milford brought up some good points, and I'm like, I think there's going to be a lot different fight. Something he said about the hesitation that Usman had kind of in that second fight, more so than the first. I think the first Usman was just really comfortable, but he was throwing some good combos, some good hands. He was controlling a lot of that fight, so it was not a big deal. The second fight, there was some weird hesitation. I don't think Colby's going to have any of that, so I think he's going to be just as dangerous as Usman was in that first fight. against Leon. So Leon's going to have to endure another fight camp, doing more wrestling, doing more of this. And thing is Colby can do both. So, he'll use his wrestling just like he always does as a threat. He can throw his hands there. I just think he's going to be a really, really hard puzzle again for Leon to have to go through another camp, figuring out how he's going to have to fight another heavy like MMA grappler and try to come out on top again. So it could be a dull fight because it just could be another stinker of a fight. I don't know, because it's going to be, like you said, a chess match. So I'm kind of sixes on it, but I think Colby presents more of a threat this time.
I think that's a good point. And it's a good point to think for the division. Like if he's able to defeat Usman again, and if he's able to even get a boring decision win against Colby, that's really putting notice to the 170-pound division. Look, I can beat strikers, and now I've just beaten two of the best grapplers in the division. So it's it's interesting to see how it plays out. I'm not a big fan of craziness and madness, but when it happens, I still get swept up in it. So I'm getting ready for the Kobe ride as he promotes that fight. And I don't know if it's going to be in England or not. I hope it is in England. Because that will bring more intense reactions to the things that Kobe's going to bring to the promotional game. So looking forward to it. All right. So on April 1st, when I read it, I thought it's April 1st. That's why I'm reading it. And I thought it's an April Fool's joke that Endeavor's buying the WWE and that the UFC and the WWE would be in the same organization. So I saw it on my Twitter feed when, I don't know, early in the day, and really didn't give it much. Like I was convinced it was. And then that evil clown is because it wasn't April Fool's. That is a legit business merger where really, if you listen to Chael Sonnen, this has come full circle, right? Because the UFC's business model, according to Chael, they had looked at a bunch of different business models and they settled on the WWF/WWE in terms of promoting fights and, even the entrances and those things early on. And now the UFC and the WWE, right after WrestleMania weekend, both reside under the same banner. So we're in our buy or sell portion of the show. And we will start with Joe. Buying or selling? Is this a good thing or is this a bad thing that Endeavor is now the parent company for both the WWE and the UFC?
I mean, I guess I'm buying just because I think it's kind of been a fun rivalry as things have gone by. Like you said, there was so much that there was tied together promotionally. A lot of things were mimicked. There are so many UFC fans or fighters nowadays that gag about transitioning over or have transitioned over. Obviously, Ronda Rousey, big on that one. Cain Velasquez was big on that too. So, I think it makes sense. I don't think it's going to hurt anything. If anything, it's just going to make things more entertaining. I don't know if you saw that cut by Volkanovski and Robert Whittaker dressing up as Hulk Hogan and Steve Austin. So
I missed that.
Definitely some fighters in on that. Oh man, you got to see that. It's freaking hilarious.
You got to look that up. Like you owe it to yourself to see that.
It's so great. I'm like, speaking of PI guys, he did a great job. But yeah, dude, it's fun. I think it's just fun. It's all entertainment, right? And the way it goes, I don't think it's a bad thing. I'm buying.
Joe's buying. All right, we're going to Milford. You buying or selling that they're both under the same tent?
I'm buying.
Buying.
I think part of it was a power move too, just to look at Vince and just like, we got you. But at the same time, with people like Brock and Ronda crossing over and whatnot, it makes sense, and it should be exciting for the things that they can come up with. So I look forward to it. I mean, because it'll only make it better. WWE is so corny right now. So I'm excited to see what they come up with.
Awesome. We got 2 buy-in. How about you, Spencer? Buying or selling?
I'm buying it only because I want Tap Out shirts to come back. Tap Out got acquired by WWE, so let's get some more of that. No, but honestly, as long as you keep your WWE out of my UFC, I'm good. You know, like you can share the same banner, you can co-promote and like cut each other's commercials. I'm cool with that, but I don't want crossover events where like they're, you know, the UFC is starting to get more into the hokey stuff and WWE's. I don't know. It's like, look, both are good products on their own, and they have some crossover appeal, but they also have loyal fans in either or. So look, them falling under the same banner doesn't exactly hurt the UFC, and as long as we're not co-promoting it, look, I'm probably more on board to see the occasional WWE promo on a MMA website than I am seeing more slap league stuff. So I'll buy it for now.
We're definitely selling slap. I'm buying. I think it's unanimous, right? 15 years ago, I would have been selling. I would have been upset about this, but I think that the UFC MMA has created its own identity enough to the point that people aren't going to be, you know what I mean? There's people that, there's going to be the people that are saying it was fake the whole time and all that kind of stuff, right? The UFC is fake and all those, you're not going to change their minds. But when the sport was still in the growth phase, this would have freaked me out. Like this would have been, my eyes, a really bad thing, because there wasn't enough differentiation. But I think the identity between the two, one is sports entertainment, and one is a sport. I think it's okay. So, although I did, I guess I April fooled myself because I was like, nope, not real until, and then when I found out it was real, I was like looking a whole bunch of different websites and like, well, then I'm gonna wait till the second and see if they're still, doing this. And yeah, but in the end of it, I don't think it's a bad thing. I'm okay with it today.
Yeah. The one thing I will say though that I thought was interesting from all of this is that there were evaluations done for the value of each company. WWE was purchased for about 4 point something billion dollars, which is about what the UFC sold for in 2016, was it, or 2015, 2014, whatever 16. It was. But on that note, they showed how much the UFC is currently valued out now, which is about 12 billion. So it's tripled in value. So I just think that's worth considering when we keep hearing the talk surrounding fighter pay, and we've seen the value of the company grow exponentially, but we haven't exactly seen that as far as fighter pay. And like somebody gave the example a while back where you look at Conor McGregor when he was making his debut, was making like 12,000, not his debut, but like, while he was just starting to build up his popularity, he was getting 12 to show, 12 to win. And then you fast forward to a comparable person in recent years, Paddy Pimblett, who they're also selling out, they're using his name to sell out stadiums in England. He's getting 12 to show and 12 to win. And I'm like, a lot of time has passed and a lot of growth has happened with the UFC, but fighter pay has not really changed that much. And, yes, we'll get the occasional Conor McGregor or somebody to be like the exception to the rule. But as far as across the board, it's kind of a shame that fighters are not seeing that exponential growth.
I think we're seeing it on the top end. I think the top end is a lot higher, right? So the top end contracts are higher, but to your point, the bulk of the roster, right? The bulk of the roster isn't John Jones. It's not Francis Ngannou. It's not Conor McGregor. Those $1 million fights aren't rare. You know what I mean? You look at the pay-per-view share and those kind of things. They're making $3-5 million. Like that piece has gone up, but you're right. The 12 and 12s and the 10 and 10s and those things are still out there. Those are the pieces that need to move. And so that continues to be, I think I saw it was 12 and 21 was the WWE Was it a higher valuation than the UFC when they valued the two companies? I don't remember.
I can't remember. Like all I know is that they got WWE for $4 billion and they valued the UFC at 12 currently in current year.
Started at $2 million when Dana White, when the
Yeah,
Fertitta brothers bought it, $2 million, and then in 2001 or 2 or something, and now it's $12 billion. So
I'll tell you what, they get a storyline with Logan Paul getting assaulted. That's gonna go up.
Well, we're going to talk about kind of something of that nature here in a minute. So, right now there is a Twitter beef, Instagram beef, and I don't read. I'm not sure what language that's in, Russian, but there is supposedly Rachmanov is calling out Hamzat. I posted a picture. I guess Rachmanov posted a picture of a dog or something, and then it wasn't him with a dog, but it was. I couldn't even tell what the picture was, but it looked like it was either a dead dog or it was a dog that was being abused, and then deleted it. But it was supposedly supposed to represent a wolf. That's Hamzat. That's his nickname. So, is there real heat between the two of them? Might we actually see the UFC pair up two highly touted and very valuable in terms of records and followings? Are you buying or selling that these two could actually have heat and actually fight before one of them has a title? And who did we start with? We started with, let's go with Spencer and go the other direction. So, Spencer, you buying or selling that we might actually see these two fight in the near future without one of them having a belt?
I'm buying just because of the fact that Hamzat's been, he's kind of disappeared lately, and it's been a while since we've seen him in action. And so, I don't know. I think that's a fight to make personally. What weight class would that be at? Because I know that Hamzat,
supposedly it'd be at 170. Because that's what Rachmanov's at. But I mean, Hamzat missed 170 by a long shot in his last try.
Yeah,
170.
In that sense, I wouldn't maybe I wouldn't put too much stock in it, because I don't think Hamzat should ever go back to welterweight personally, because I don't think the returns are there anyways. But I mean, look, I'm open for seeing that fight. I think that it could be a good fight to make, but I don't know. Well, for me, I'm more on the fence just because of Hamzat's weight cut.
Gotcha. It was always a lot. All right, Milford, buying or selling? You think these two are close to having a fight?
I think it's a dream fight. I'm selling it a bit because I think the obligation to Bilal right now, I think that takes priority over this, as much as we love to see it. Yeah, I think that'd be, especially with the weight class issue like Spence is bringing up. I think the obligation to our man Bilal is going to take precedence over this.
Gotcha. All right, Joe, you buying, selling Hamzat Rachmanov?
Like if it's going to happen before either one of them has a belt, kind of thing.
I mean, really, that's what they're talking about. Like I beat you today.
Yeah.
Hamzat's always anytime, any place. I smash everybody.
Yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. I think it definitely could happen. If one of them starts to lose steam a little bit, this could be a good matchup, especially if they have some kind of beef. But the way Hamzat is now, he's kind of the villain, a little bit coming off as the villain now. It's a good story arc. I mean, gosh, dude, it's a good story to tell if they do meet at some point before they're champions or whatever, and before they're undefeated. I mean, gosh, dude, that would be a good fight card, but it could be a waste. So maybe they won't do it. So I guess selling, just because I think they'll both have to be in a place where they're not as popular, maybe, or they're one of them is a champ. Is the only time I see these two fighting.
Yeah, I'm selling. I think that one, there's the weight thing. There's the it's hard to make a big fight when you know that your main event may not make weight. I think Dana wants Hamzat at 185. Rakhmanov's got his own stuff going on. He's got his title to chase. Love to see it. Now, if this were buy and selling, would you want to see it? Hell yeah. I would love to see this. And I believe, there's some kind of heat between them. I don't know if they're, who knows whether it's real, but when there's deleted tweets and deleted Instagram posts and those kind of things, makes me feel like there was some emotion when it was posted. And then, I don't know if somebody told them, hey, you better take that down or what, but there's something there. But I'd like to see it. I think we may see it down the road. I just think they're on two different paths right now. I think Hamzat's probably more into the 185. And I don't know if he's, before he was hungry, he was making the cut. He was, fighting in both divisions. He wasn't having problems with weight. And then the Nate Diaz thing was just bizarre. Just seemed weird to miss by as much as he did. All right. We're going to move on to buying or selling. And if you're a longtime fan, a lot of these make sense. If some of these are around, if the age doesn't have you all the way back to, I don't know, King of Kings, or maybe Pancrase, maybe not. But the statement, now is the best time ever. This era is the best ever for mixed martial arts / no holds barred. I'll go first, and this is an age thing. I feel like 2002 to 2006, 2008 was the golden era of MMA. You had Pride in full swing. You had, some of the Pride pay-per-views. I was looking through them the other day, and you had the end of the middleweight Grand Prix, which really would be light heavyweight Grand Prix today. You had like Dan Henderson and Rampage and Shogun and Vanderlei, Overeem. Like, you had killers in that. The finals was on the same card. The finals, and it was a tournament where they had to fight twice. So Shogun fought twice and Arona fought twice that night. Shogun beat Arona in the finals of the middleweight Grand Prix, and Mirko Krokop fought Fedor for the heavyweight title. Think about that from a pay-per-view standpoint. And you had amazing cards in the UFC. So, and then you also in 2004, in that 2000, 2006 range, you had Tough Series, the Ultimate Fighter series broke in 2004, whenever it did. So I'm selling. I think that to me, the golden age was when there was more competition between organizations, but I'm an old guy. So we'll go to Joe. Buying or selling?
That I don't know. I think that was definitely the glory days in some ways, right? You mentioned so many, like there was a lot of competition between different promotions, and some of the promotions had, they had their champions, they had their fighters, and then there was crossover here and there at events. I mean, that was cool to see. But I would actually kind of say that now is kind of the time to get into it, because there's so much more depth. You've got markets that weren't developed at the time, so now you have opportunities to see people who didn't have a chance. Maybe there was no MMA in their country, and now they've got gyms there, and now they've got training. Like, we've got Polish fighters in. We had the era of the Polish fighters, right, where they came in, and we've had Polish champions. We've had champions from more than just countries, Brazil and the United States, or the UK. Like, we've expanded out, and because of that, look how many different countries we have involved now. We can see like the competition is stepped up. I think this is kind of the era where it's just going to keep blowing up now. There's a lot of rivals to the UFC trying to catch up to UFC. I don't know if anybody ever will quite get to that level, but because it's there's just so much good talent circling out there. The promotions that are under the UFC are still great because they're filtering in good talent from their hometowns and from where they're at. So I think right now is probably, it really is like probably better now than it was, but
You're
not
buying.
not knocking the OGs, because I still have watched all of those too and love them to death. So
Hey, great point. The era that I said was the golden era. There were no PI champions. There were barely any PI fighters. So something for me to think about in my old brain, my old head. Appreciate that. Milford, how about you? Buying or selling that now is the greatest era of mixed martial arts?
I lean more towards the buying side. Now the structure back then, where people fighting multiple times in one night, now that's that's badass. Especially if you grow up, a Street Fighter fan or Fist of Fury, those type of games. That's what you want.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I think Milford froze. He got so excited about Fists of Fury and multiple fights in one night.
Yeah, but just like any sports, the level of talent and competition evolves because of those who come before them, and that's what we're seeing now. Uh, like, I mean, sure, there are one-sided fights here and there, but when it's high-level competition against high-level competition, you see how much more well-rounded they are, and even the cornermen, the coachings, it's a lot more evolved, and it's great to see now. But you got to love those OG days of Rampage and Vanderlei, those killers, and juiced up as they may be.
Oh yeah,
it was awesome to see. But
it's it's one of those things where the Pride contracts actually, Ensign Inoue had posted on the Underground clauses in his Pride contract, and it actually calls out. It doesn't just omit that there's no testing, right? It doesn't just say, it doesn't just leave that out. It actually says no fighter will be tested for any kind of performance enhancing drug. Like, it is telling you to juice. It's saying, look, everybody else is gonna, you better too. Looking at that contract, it was like, yeah, those some wild west days where you had people outweighing other people by 300 pounds and getting in the ring and doing the David and Goliath thing. So good point. I love what Joe's brought up, though. The era that I said didn't have PI fighters, not prominent, not the way that that we have now. So something for me to think about. Spencer, how about you? Buying or selling?
I'm with you on this one, where I think I'm selling, but I'm going to attach an asterisk to that I do think that we have the potential so that the best is yet to come. And so what I mean by that is, like, we have a basically an embarrassment of riches nowadays. It is a good era to be an MMA fan. We've got events happening all the time. We've got so much MMA happening now that we can't even take all the events in as they happen, and that's a good thing. But at the same time, in my opinion, I feel like the product has become a bit sterilized. A lot of stuff is just looking very same, or it's like almost too corporate feeling. And then, what I mean is, like, you might even be able to say the same about, let's look at the NBA. NBA is, I'm not a huge basketball head, so forgive me to those who are more well versed in all of this stuff. Like, the talent pool right now is probably the greatest it's ever been. But do you feel that same excitement as when you were watching the Bulls go on their run in the 90s, or when the Celtics were battling it out with the Lakers? And, like, there are golden eras where there's moments of excitement that, you haven't, I don't see currently replicated today. And for me, I go back to that golden era you're talking about. For me, it's that Chuck Liddell, Rampage, like, rise of Anderson Silva, like BJ Penn getting a championship in 2 weight classes. It was also new, and MMA just felt like it was this band, this like underground band that you found that nobody else knew about yet, and you're trying to put people onto it. You know what I mean? And so but there's no doubt that as far as the talent pool goes, we're in an era where we have probably the best fighters ever. And because, as much as I complain about fighter pay needing to go up, it is more lucrative now than it was before. And so guys are looking at this as in a way where they're like, you know what, I can invest more time in this. It is a lucrative career where I can set aside doing this job or that job and make a career out of this. Like, it's because of that factor alone, more guys are actually investing into training at younger ages to try to aspire to being the best at this. Whereas before, we were getting the guys, like Tank Abbott stumbling out of the bar. That was a fun time, and I miss those times. But there's no doubt that we have probably the best talent now. But I think there's nothing today that quite matches that excitement from before. But I do think the best is yet to come. I think now that we've got our talent pool figured out, there's ways to kind of bring back the showmanship or something like that, where we can get people excited about the product again. I don't want to be like, oh, well, it's too mainstream, so it'll never be cool again. I don't want to be like that. I think that the best is yet to come. We're just trying to find the balance of things.
I just want to say something too, like, just kind of when you were talking, Spence, about that, I think that's why, for me personally, like, my favorite run of fighters, like in the, I guess not now, but like when Robbie Lawler made his comeback, when he got back to the UFC, I'm like, I think he kind of represented kind of that. He was on the wave when UFC was already on the rise, right? So he wasn't like quite as old as some of the other guys, but going back to when he fought like Nick Diaz back in the day, right? All the way up to where he was in the UFC and then out of the UFC. When he made his run back, that felt like a real like Rocky story to me, because he was one of those OGs, especially when he fought Rory McDonald, because when you're making that point about people who are now kids, teenagers growing up training MMA specifically, like that was Rory McDonald. He wasn't like a scrapper that turned MMA. He was a guy who went straight through MMA and he learned all the skills that he had. And so he was kind of new wave. And for Robbie Lawler to win that, it was like old school meets new school, and the old dogs still got their chance and he got his due. So I'm like, I think that's part of what made that so exciting, was the kind of blend of the two like eras. And it was kind of like, I don't know, it was cool, but I think that's why there was some mixture between like what was good, what was bad, which era was better or whatever. I don't know. There's just a lot of stories to tell. That's why I love MMA. So
yeah,
sorry for that track there.
No, but it makes sense. I mean, that Robbie Lawler did have, his foot in both worlds. It's like the Robbie Lawler, Dan Henderson, Vitor Belfort, they were there when it was underground, and they were there when it, after it popped and after it became, on Fox or ESPN or those kind of things.
Robbie's still here technically.
Yeah, Robbie's still there, and he was, I remember talking to, I think, Jeremy Horn, and Jeremy Horn, he was at an IFC event, and he was talking about he fought for free, like literally fought for free. I mean, it said it was like 150 or something, and he said that there's some of those he doesn't remember if he ever got the check from the promoter, because he just wanted to fight, he wanted to compete. And he was saying, yeah, some of them, I'm like, I don't know if I fought for free or not. I don't know. I can't even remember if I went to get the check. And we've come from that to, having it be regulated and have, now when I went to an amateur event a couple of years ago, there's a ring with ring card girls and photographers and a real octagon and lights and an announcer and EMTs there at the ringside. I was like, wow. I can remember, I remember events at Gussie Lamore's by the airport in Hawaii, or, in bars. So man, I definitely think the best athletes are now, without a doubt. The fighters are the best they've ever been. So good for me to think about, because, I got my thoughts. And then even as we were going through it, somebody said BJ Penn. I was like, wait a minute, there was a PI champion back then. So always open my eyes.
They just got to, bring in the lessons from the old school too. Bring it in, they got to bring back sweet submissions. You remember that?
Yeah.
You got to educate the new audience of these submissions, get the ring girls to start demonstrating triangles and stuff.
Oh my gosh. Forgotten parts of the sport. All right. So Tank Davis, Gervonta Tank Davis versus King Ryan Garcia, and we had talked about Logan Paul, Jake Paul, the whole YouTube, Instagram group. Ryan Garcia, buying or selling? Are you going to watch this when it happens? And we'll start with Milford.
Oh yeah, this is definitely must see for me because often when it comes to boxing, you don't get the fights you want to see, and this is fun. This is one that's being served up at the right time. I think. I'm so excited, man. Tank is man, he's just the beast. Like those guys we talk about downloading information. He's sweet with the science, and Garcia with that speed and that left hook, and and of course, you got the cultures, added, the black community and Tank and Mexicans and Garcia, like, oh, Tank can't even touch Garcia, or Garcia's got no power. Tank's gonna knock him out in one hit.
Who you got?
I got to go with Tank. If it goes to like a lot of standing and brawling in one spot and not a lot of movement by Garcia, I think Tank's gonna find that opening quicker than Garcia will.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Joe, buying and selling. Are you going to watch this on the 22nd?
Nope. I know, and it's just that because I don't follow him, so I'm like, I'm gonna not say anything. I thought about saying like, oh yeah, Garcia, he's just got such fast hands, but I'm like, I don't know anything about these guys. I'm just gonna throw that out there right now. I've heard them both. I think I've seen them both on Instagram and stuff. I just don't follow boxing as much unless they're maybe like heavyweights. I kind of follow that a little bit in boxing world. So anything I say about these guys can be completely stupid.
So I would correlate this, Joe, to just what Milford said. This is the fight that boxing fans want to see. It's two guys in their prime at the same weight or near, making the fight at the right weight that they're getting. So we're not getting Usyk versus Tyson Fury, right? That's a fight that boxing fans want to see. Like, how are we not seeing that? So this is, to Milford's point, this is one where you're like unbeaten in their prime, not some over the hill guy, former great that now has a loss and a blemish on the record. So just from that standpoint, Joe, even if you're not a boxing fan, you can kind of see that's why boxing fans are excited, because we're getting what we want. Spencer, how about you? Buying and selling?
You know what? I'm going to take the same route as my brother. I'm too uneducated on this one because it's been a minute since I followed boxing. I used to follow it like decently just through whatever avenue I had. I used to have cable. I would record all the events and watch them as I could, especially the PBC ones, because they had a pretty good deal with like Fox Sports 1, things like that. And then even I did have the DAZN app for a while when Bellator was packaged with them, but I canceled that when Bellator bounced on him, and it's just I haven't been following boxing in recent years, so I don't want to disrespect the event or these guys by trying to pretend I have an opinion about it. So
fair enough.
But I'll say I'm buying because from what you guys have explained, I want to see it. So let me just say I'm buying it on that. Like, my intrigue is there. If I'm able to catch it, I'll try to catch this fight for sure.
So for Milford, I guess, because he's probably seen the build up. Garcia is seen as kind of that new wave, kind of took some time off, is really active on his social media. A lot of people are saying this is too big of a jump, too quick. Like, he shouldn't be fighting Gervonta at this point in his career. He should be taking more fights leading up to this. I'm picking Gervonta as well. I think that I just think it's a little early in Ryan's career to take somebody at Davis's level. I think it's possible. I mean, that left hook is ridiculous. If that lands, everything changes. But I think kind of what we had talked about with Mark Hunt earlier, just knows how to get things done, been around, has the experience. I think Davis finds a way to get it done, but wouldn't shock me at all if Garcia lands that ridiculously fast and powerful left hook that, I mean, some of the times I know it's a replay, I know it's coming, I still see the guy falling and I'm like, okay, I'm going to watch the slow motion and see it again. But do you think it's too big? Are you picking Davis because you think it's too big of a step up for Garcia, or you just think Davis is a better fighter at this point?
More so. So you bring up a good point about Garcia and his experience, but yeah, more so Davis is, to me, just a better, more prepared fighter. And just to let Spencer Joe know, when it comes to these boxing cards, and I follow guys that stick out, and I don't watch the whole cards. I Google, I see on Twitter when they're walking out, and then I find my legal stream and then start watching these fights. But yeah, like you said, Carl, man, Davis, that experience is a big thing, and he's not over the hill.
Right.
It's a great time for him. It could be a little bit early for Garcia, like you said.
Yeah, this is one we want. So good to see that. Good to see him put it up there. And that's usually I'm the one complaining about that. There's a monopoly of talent with the UFC. That's the major league. But the good thing about it is the UFC puts the fights together. Like if everybody is screaming for what we were just talking about, Rachmanov and Hamzat, right? If that were everybody wants to see it, and this is the fight that has to happen, Dana's going to make it happen. He's going to put him